I was digging through my boxes of old electronics and I found some real antiques that I thought I would share with you. And yeah, just kind of a light video today, something to enjoy. But maybe there's something to be learned from it. Okay, well, let's get started and see what we got. First up is this circuit board, and you may say, well, it's just a plain old circuit board. Well, yeah, but like if you compare it to something a little more modern, you can see the hole spacing on this is huge, and the holes are huge because it was made to mount stuff like big relays like this, where you were basically using something that looked like house wiring to wire the components together. Big things like huge resistors and capacitors like this, and yeah, it was oh, and tube sockets. Yeah, how could I forget tube sockets, tube sockets. So yeah, this is from an era that is somewhere after physically using wood to screw things to, and more modern circuit boards. Okay, let's see what else we got. This is from the early 1980s when cable connections, they didn't look like this USB thing. They look like big honking chunks of plastic with all sorts of connectors in it. I bought this to do a prototype. I think I was trying to attach a hard disk, or maybe it was just a floppy disk, to my Radio Shack color computer, which I had upgraded from 4K of memory up to 32K of memory, and then I figured out how to bump it up to 64K of memory. So with all that extra memory, I was going to add, I can't remember if it was a 2 1/4 floppy, or maybe it was just a 5-inch floppy, I can't remember, but anyway, it was something like that, and this would plug into the side of the color computer, and then you'd plug the other device, and then you'd put the drivers, you'd install your own hardware on here to drive the floppy or whatever it was I was going to do. It was made to use wire wrap. I can show you a little bit more detail on wire wrap in a little bit, but yeah, you use wire wrap to set up your circuit initially, and then when you got it where you wanted it, you soldered everything in place, and you had a permanent circuit board. This is what, $4.95 from Radio Shack. Yeah, so yeah, another little interesting antique. Yeah, this is just a cardboard box, but it's what came in it. Heathkit was a really great company for producing kits back in the day, and my favorites were a frequency counter and a frequency generator. They were just like really top notch. This one I had to look up the number, this CH1068. I had to look up the number. This was a kit to make a windshield wiper delay. So older cars didn't have that feature, you know, where it would like wipe every few seconds rather than just constantly. And so yeah, you built this kit, you installed it on your car, and then you were like, you know, first class. You had a windshield wiper delay on your car. Also from about the 1980s, you could buy all the chemicals and all of the stuff to make your own circuit boards. And this was a dual-sided circuit board. You bought just a raw, just a raw circuit board, and you would either use a pen, a special pen, or these tracings. You could buy tracings and lay them out on here, and then you would throw some really nasty chemicals on here, and it would dissolve away the copper where it wasn't protected, and then you would get out your special little drills and drill holes through there and make your own circuit boards. This also used to be a common item. This is also from Radio Shack, and it was just a pair of boards that you could put like a chip directly in, or you could use sockets. I always used to like to use sockets, and if you had two chips you needed to tie together, you could put them in there, or you could cut this apart here, and they were two separate circuit boards. An example of that is this thing right back here. This is an oscillator I made, and we don't do oscillators like this much anymore, but this was a phase lock loop, and for the time it was astoundingly accurate. It was really good and would make some really annoying sounds. So yeah, it was a single chip, a variable capacitor, variable resistor, capacitors here, and then on the back side just some circuitry. There's a resistor there, And that was about it. So yeah, simple little circuits you could put together. These things were really handy for that. This board, it's very similar to this. This was designed for chips, inline packages, sockets, things like that. This is more specifically for components that are general, just like resistors, capacitors, whatever, not specifically for chip packages. And on the back side, there's just a series, like a matrix of different connections, and you could put your stuff in there, you could solder it, you could wire wrap it and whatever. And yeah, just a very general circuit board. This is a breadboard, and they're still widely used. You know, you put your sockets, your components, whatever in here, you wire them up. And a lot of people who do Arduino, Raspberry Pi, stuff like that, I mean, it's, you know, used every day still. But what you may not have seen is this little addition. This is what we used to do. We used to lay this thing over the top of this, and the copper side would be down. But you lay it over the top of this, you insert your components, you get everything working. You'd lift this off of here with all your components in place, and then you'd solder it together or wire wrap it, whatever you're going to do, and you would have your circuit preserved forever, hardwired and soldered together. So yeah, that was a cute little thing that comes again from early 80s. I think I bought this. These are the wire wrap tools I was using in the early 1980s. This is wire wrap wire. It is silver plated, and even though the wire is very, very fine, it'll carry about an amp. So that's always very impressive. I still like to keep it around for soldering, like fixing tracing on a circuit board, something like that. You had the wire wrap tool, which I'll show you in a second, and then you had a stripper to strip the coating off of the wire. There were wire wrap sockets that came in all sorts of configurations, and I don't know if you can see, but this one is actually gold plated, had gold plated leads. This one just has ordinary tinned leads, and of course then you had a board like this that you would use to place your socket in and do the wire wrap. So let's do that. The first step was to get yourself a piece of wire, cut it off with a spool, and that was the hardest part, was determining how long a piece of wire you need. And then you strip off like a centimeter out here, you know, roughly half an inch, and that would be determined by the number of wraps you wanted to make around the post. But typically, you know, you only needed 2, 3, actually more than 2. You need like 3 or 4 wraps to make a good connection, a good solid connection that would stay in place. So let me load the tool. I'll show you how to load the tool, and then we'll wrap one. This is the business end of the wire wrap tool, and you can see in the center there's a hole, and then that red wire is going into another hole which goes down into a groove right over here. Here you can see I'm inserting the wire wrap wire into that groove, going in through the hole in the outer perimeter of the tool on the front of the tool, and that is where we will, that's the position it starts in. The pin of the socket will go in the center hole, and then as we twist the tool, it will wrap the wire around the post. Back here where my finger is, that's the socket, and I'm going to use that to hold it firmly in place. Then I'm going to put the tool, the center hole of the tool, over the pin I want to wrap, like this. Then I'm going to direct my wire where I need it to be, and get my finger out of the way. And then I'm just going to rotate the tool, and what will happen is you'll notice the wire gets pulled down through the groove. It'll get shorter and shorter, and it looks like I've got a little too much wire, but anyway. So when I remove it, you get these beautiful windings that is silver material. It is actually silver plated wire, and it's the easiest stuff in the world to solder. If you can't solder silver wire, yeah, it's like the easiest thing in the world. And especially if you have gold plated pins and silver wire, super easy to solder. And then you would just take your wire wherever you're going to connect the next point, and you would strip the other end, and you would connect it to the next one and wire wrap that. And when you were all done and your circuit was working beautifully, you would come along and just solder each of these and then clip off the excess of the lead, and that was it. Also, if you had a problem and you found out it didn't work right, you could just untwist these, and they would slip off of here pretty easily. Let's see if I can get it to do it. Yeah, you see how loose it is? It'll just slide off of there. The only thing special about these leads, these long leads, are the fact that they're square. They're very square, and the edges are a little bit sharp, so that they would bite into the wire and make a firm connection until you had time to solder, until you chose to solder it. And that was pretty much it for wire wrap. It was a great technology. I haven't done it in like 30 years, but you can see it's not too tough. And other than the number of connections you had to make, and you had to repeat that process over and over again, it was very reliable. It was a very good technique for the time. Well, that's it for today's Electronic Antique Roadshow. I hope you found it useful and interesting in your electro-archaeological research.